So, this is a disclaimer, and the story you're about to hear is a personal account of a dangerous sleep deprivation, and it's shared for educational purposes only, so you should just not try that at home. And let's dive into the video. It all started as an experiment, a test of willpower. I wanted to see how far I could push my own limits of my own mind, to see what would happen if I just stopped sleeping for days. I had this idea that I could somehow achieve an altered state of consciousness through sheer endurance and curiosity. My ego was high. I thought I knew my limits. I was profoundly wrong. The experiment began with the back of a significant sleep debt, which was my first mistake. The first 12 hours were a brutal grind. My attention was a flickering candle in the wind. By early evening, my eyelids felt like lead shutters, constantly trying to close on their own. I remember physically pushing them open, telling myself, "You have an experiment to finish. You have to make it, at least 24 hours. By 8 p.m. on the first night, I was broken. The exhaustion was a physical weight. Every part of me was screaming for sleep. Just as I was about to give in, my phone rang. It was a friend. Hey, you wanna hang out? He said. It was a perfect excuse, a distraction to keep me from surrendering. I went over to his place, and we settled in to play some video games. Hotline Miami 2, if I'm not mistaken. I think we'd take turns, my turn, his turn, but I was useless. I couldn't string together 10 solid hits. I couldn't even make it to the second floor of the level. He looked over at me, concerned. "My God, you used to be so good at this. What happened to you?" he said. He must have seen it all. The bloodshot eyes, the black as asphalt bags under them. "Dude," he said, "have you slept? You don't look productive." "Nah," I mumbled. "I'm just experimenting on myself." And that's when the first cracks in reality appeared. I clearly heard my name being called. I snapped my head around. No one was there. Just my friend, the helm of the console, and his dog in the other room. We were completely alone. "What are you looking at?" he asked. "There's no one here. It was just a dog barking." I tried to brush it off as a simple misinterpretation of sound, but a few minutes later, an unspeakable feeling washed over me, a strong, distinct presence. I felt with absolute certainty that another friend of ours was in the room, just chilling with us. I turned, expecting to see 3 of us. There were only 2. A cold wave of paranoia hit me. It felt so completely real. Wasn't our friend over here?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He just looked at me and confused. "Are you sure you're okay? My parents are out for the weekend. No one is home with us." The world was starting to change. My peripheral vision collapsed, and my main line of sight grew darker, tunneling. It felt like I was walking through a dream, a zombie on autopilot, with no goals, no interests, just a grim determination to see the experiment through. Eventually I left. He walked me to the bus station, and I went home. The moment I stepped into my empty house, a chill ran down my spine. This was different. At my friend's place, I could blame a sound, a dog, or a shadow on a trick of the light. Here, I was alone. The windows were closed. There was no external input. If something happened here, I would have had no excuses. To fight off the cruising desire to sleep, I blasted music. Aggressive, loud, metal, banging against my eardrums. I thought I'd been listening for 2 or 3 hours, but when I checked the clock, only an hour passed. Time was completely broken. It would crawl by for what felt like an eternity, only for minutes to have passed. Then, in a blink, an entire hour would vanish. My brain couldn't function well enough to log my experiences properly. My notes from the time are completely mess. My thoughts started to unravel. I began to believe in contradictory truths coexisting, that the world was both finite and infinite at the same time. It was a logic that would have sounded like a drug-induced nonsense, but in my exhausted state, it made perfect but terrifying sense. The idea that this reality was a simulation became less of a thought and more of a deeply felt belief. Then, the music started talking to me, not just the lyrics, but the very fabric of the sound. I felt it was communicating, sending me messages. I freaked out and switched to a simple, repetitive melody, hoping it would be calming and soothing. But that was the worst decision I've ever made. After 20 minutes of the looping tune, I started hearing distinct voices moving into it. Voices that weren't there. I paused the music. For a split second, a latency. The voices continued before fading into silence. My God, my brain was just filling in the emptiness, I thought, just trying to calm myself down. Walking to the bathroom, I felt the walls watching me. Every surface in the house felt like it was listening, spying. I couldn't look directly at them for too long. By this point, about 28 hours in, the visual hallucinations began. If I started at any single object, a spot on the wall, a doorknob, it would start to shift, to morph, or to breeze. I knew it was just my exhausted eyes, my brain failing to process stable images, but knowing didn't make it stop. The presence hallucinations returned, stronger than ever. I would feel a family member moving around in the next room, only to be struck by the paralyzing memory that no one was home. My dream state was bleeding into my waking state, the two realities overlapping until I could barely tell them apart. The only thing that kept me from spiraling into total insanity was a tiny sliver of self-awareness. I knew this wasn't real. Whenever the paranoia became too much, I'd force myself to do something else. Watch YouTube, walk around, anything to break the loop. I somehow survived the night. At 2 p.m. the next afternoon, I finally declared the experiment over. I shut down. I slept until 10 a.m. the next morning. When I woke up, I felt more broken than before I slept. It was a hollow, unrestful sleep. I felt disconnected, like I wasn't in my own body. The world felt profoundly surreal, as if the dreamlike state had persisted, clinging to me. But the most interesting part was the dream. I had dreamed a long sleep. I was talking to some kind of entity. I can't remember its face, but the feeling it gave me was one of the most peaceful and absolutely terrifying. It spoke to me. Its message was clear. What are you doing is not good, it seemed to say, but it could have held on longer. You could have seen more, but you weren't ready. It felt like it was trying to manipulate me, to tempt me into pushing even further next time, or maybe to even traumatize me, but I think that's my subconscious mind trying to say that it didn't hold any longer, but it didn't have to. I didn't remember anything much else out of it, but it's been a week since the experiment ended, and my memory is still foggy. I'm still running on a sleep debt, but the story is there. A foolish experiment born from ego that pushed my mind to its breaking point and showed me that the walls of our reality are far more fragile than what we would have thought. And yeah, the last detail that I need to add to this story is I've drank a lot of energy drinks that might have acted as stimulants to my brain to exhaust it even more, and listening to loud music for a prolonged period of time is also enhancing and leading it to faster effects. I did it unknowingly, but it showed me that it is real, so you need to take care of your sanity while you still have it. So if you liked this story, I would appreciate your attention in terms of likes or comments. I would be really curious and interested to do any sort of content like this if you let me know. So yeah, that was basically it. Thanks for watching and have a good day.